Let's go. Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff here with co-host Chip. What is going on, Chip? What's going on, everybody out there in the On the Chain family? Today, Chip, I'm selling my XRP. That's it. I'm done. I'm out. It's
Okay.
been 4 years
Relax.
and that's
Relax.
it.
Calm
I'm
down.
out.
Take a
I'm
deep
out.
breath.
Things are getting ready to take off and I'm out before it takes off. How
That
about
makes
that?
sense.
Ripple, a lot of talk about Ripple going public, and there's a brand new crypto legislation that is in draft form that is being introduced to Congress that is going to put the SEC in their place. They're going to double down on what Warren Davidson is doing to remove the chair position. They're doubling down, giving the CFTC more power. Hear about it. We're going to talk about it. Chip, you ready to kick this thing off?
Hey, let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
Jimmy the Meek, Jeff and Chip, I must
What's going on,
admit
guys?
that over the years, you have developed a bad habit in regards to your punctuality.
Well, let's just say that
Always
who was
late.
here on. Let's just say who was on time.
Me.
No, you were not on time.
You know what we
rolls
do?
in.
Well, I rolled in. To be fair, I
talk a
set it
lot.
up
Unfortunately,
earlier.
we start talking, and that's bad. We're like, we got to do the show.
We start doing the show before the show. So welcome, everybody. Great to have everyone here. The Comfy Lounge is here with us live, maybe for the first time. We're not sure how.
Hey, guys, if you're a new subscriber, like within the last week or two, could you just put something in the chat there? Because YouTube says otherwise. So I just out of curiosity. But
YouTube. Chip, I was reading about the algorithms on YouTube. Apparently it's a thing. Apparently a lot of people are questioning why they lose subs when they're actually gaining subs. And part of it could be a cleaning of the house. Maybe YouTube is finally getting to the point where they're removing those bot spam. You know, when you go on and you see the comments and all of a sudden there's 20, 30, 40 comments on a thing. And you always say, hey, I wonder why YouTube isn't going after those people. And so in some regards, it could be that. But in other regards, I don't know. I don't know. But Steve Walker is off Twitter. That's
banned
it.
off Twitter. All he said was
Banned. All he said was XRP. That's it.
all it's going to take.
Bruce just bought some XRP for the first time in years. Think about that. Think about how long people have been holding into this space. I saw some interesting comments, Chip. People were talking about XRP. How far back did people buy XRP? And I saw some comment in Twitter. Someone was talking about sub 1 penny.
Would have been nice, Jeff. Really would have been nice. That's some serious belief. Patsy Green's in here. What's up, Patsy? From Canada. Our friends to the north, Jeff. I mean, we share North America with Canada and Mexico. Good morning. What's up? Mike Morath sent a good story today, too.
XRP, XRP
well,
was on a ship and spotted the abominable snowman in a uniform. Turns out he was their chief Yeti officer.
I like that. Good person. I always like to see who's the first person that's going to bring up the Yetis, and good to see that, Peaky. But let's jump in this story right here. I wanted to jump in, guys. Drop where you're from. Jeff will throw it up there as we go through the story. But some really good news. We've been hearing about it for a while, since January, when the red team assumed the control of the House of Representatives in Congress. How's that coffee smell, Jeff? Looks fantastic.
Yeah, this coffee smells good.
I got my coffee right here too.
That's nice.
I don't have it in my official cup today. Neither one of us are using the official gear. What's wrong with us? The official OTC gear. But anyway,
we need to do that. You know what we need? We need some glass OTC cups. You know, about this size. So then that'd be great. Today is Segfredo Day. Soon it will be another day.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that day. Here we go. So financial services, the GOP on Twitter put this out. New chairman Patrick McHenry and also French Hill released a digital asset market structure proposal along with the House AG, the Agricultural Committee. And you'd think well, what the hell is the Agricultural Committee? Well, they actually have a lot more power than you might think. They don't just cover agriculture. It's a lot of other stuff. Actually, they probably have the best chance of doing something in this space. And Chairman, this is Glenn Thompson, and also we've got Dusty Johnson on this one as well. So
His
four
name is Dusty Johnson.
Dusty Johnson, and he hails from, Jeff, South Dakota's lone U.S. representative. That's it.
And there we go.
And it really, because of that, is because it's population based, and nobody lives. Basically, let's get the population of South Dakota. North Dakota and South Dakota are just like, you don't have any neighbors. It's like neighbor, and you're like they're not anywhere near close to you.
There's something to be said for that. You know what?
Yeah, get the population on South. Well, it's cold up there. That's a good part of the year, but Dusty Johnson is representing all, and usually based on population, like my representative here, and is different than Jeff's, and Jeff's is only 40 minutes away. So it's
okay. Ready? 895,376 as of 2021. There's no update for 2023. So let's say gained a few, lost a few. They're around 895,000.
And like if you say, so you think about a population of an average, like New York City, I think in just Manhattan alone, there's like 11 million people, something like that. 7 to 11 million people. I don't know. I know there's a lot of people that. But think about that. I mean, 800,000 people in a state. The state's pretty large, pretty sizable state as well. So South Dakota, North Dakota, nobody lives there. So Dusty Johnson, lone representative. And the idea of this is unprecedented joint effort to provide clarity to the digital asset ecosystem. And let's go here to check out the bill here. And it says the discussion draft is the first step towards delivering on Republicans' commitment to develop clear rules of the road for digital asset ecosystems, said Chair McHenry. Our goal is to strike the appropriate balance between consumer protection and encouraging responsible innovation. This is the product of the unprecedented joint effort between the House Financial Services and Agricultural Committees, which gives us a better shot at striking a nice, fair balance, or they should say the balance, and encourage stakeholders and market participants to provide constructive feedback to help us improve the legislation.
So Chip, here, I'm going to bring this up because I think this is the actual draft notice that they published. And here's what's interesting. So there's two key things here in this legislation that will help improve. And what Chairman McHenry is doing is vital for the ecosystem. Are you seeing a flash?
Yeah, well, it's not. Yeah, it's flashing like crazy.
How weird. Try that again. There's something up with StreamYard. Get your
doing some weird. It's been doing some weird stuff.
Weird. So here we go. So this over here, classification as a security versus a commodity, and this is where they're going to be removing some of the powers of the SEC and giving them to the CFTC. But here, the act builds on the current exemption regime for the offer and sale of digital asset pursuant to an investment contract, including a disclosure regime to address the potential risk associated with digital assets. Under this exemption, digital asset issuers will need to demonstrate that their digital assets operate on a decentralized network and fulfill certain fit-for-purpose disclosure requirements. So there's two things already important here that, as we're trying to gain clarity to the space, something that Gary Gensler is unable to do as the chair of the SEC. He doesn't have the power to draft legislation. He can comment on existing legislation. He says things are clear. This draft bill right now to have a digital asset issuer demonstrate that they're on a decentralized network, I think, number one, that's relatively easy to do. Number two, the question is fit for purpose disclosure. What is the certain fit for purpose? We'll find out. The act specifies that a digital asset can be considered a digital commodity if certain conditions are met. This would be determined by the network being functional and considered decentralized. The act includes definitions for a decentralized network and a functional network and provides a certification process under which a digital asset issuer may certify to the SEC that the network on which the digital asset relates is decentralized. The SEC may object to the certification if the SEC determines the certification is inconsistent with the act, but must provide a detailed analysis of its reasons for doing so. And this is before we get into regulating the SEC. But Chip, I think on its face, just this presentation, the language, the way they're drafting it starts making sense. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it reminds me of talking heads. Stop making sense, start making sense, stop making sense. Because, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think that first paragraph is a lot more powerful. I think the idea of demonstrating the fact that it has to be that you demonstrate it kind of, I think it sort of borrows from Hester Peirce's, fair, what is that called?
Fair notice?
No, it wasn't fair notice. It was, what's it called? It was, I forget what her bill was called offhand. But anyway, it allowed 3 years, and then it was 2 years to become decentralized. And what they're saying here is you demonstrate that it is decentralized. And the reason I think they're pointing that out is because I just don't believe that anybody in Congress or anybody in government, for that matter, understands the concept of decentralization. It's very foreign to them because it really is counter to what they do, right? They're a person there representing a bunch of people. We talked about Dusty representing 800,000 people, and they represent a group of people. They're supposed to represent the people. But what we get into decentralization is we don't need you as a representative anymore. We could have a government that stands as a DAO or one vote. But I'm troubled a little bit by the second paragraph, where it says, did I lose it?
It's right here.
Okay, so yeah, the part where it says, the SEC, well, even that sentence above where it says digital issuer may certify to the SEC that the network on which the digital assets relates is decentralized, but the SEC may object to the certification if the SEC determines the certification is inconsistent with the act. And right there is where I find a big problem, because you can always find something wrong. You're going to find something. I don't think the SEC has any. How are you going to object to if someone demonstrates it and say, like, well, no, it's not decentralized. It's a he said, she said type of thing. Like, well, no, it is. But it is because it operates without any sort of human intervention. We don't have anything to do with it. Like, you could really easily, when you think about Ripple, yeah, okay, well, what happens? Well, yeah, you have a bunch of nodes, and if somebody puts an amendment and Ripple has like a 4% vote towards that, and they vote yes, and they say, like, what do you want? Well, we want to burn 50% of the XRP, burn the escrow. Ripple can't object to it. I mean, if there's enough support in the network, it's decentralized. That's the whole point of it. So decentralization comes in a lot of forms. The bottom line is it cannot be. This is where I kind of think you get into a weird area with Ethereum, because there is a lot of sort of control over what happens, especially this new last update they did within the last couple of months, is that requires some control, and it's not totally decentralized.
So what I'm thinking here, as long as the act itself spells out the definition of a decentralized network, right, and puts the key points that you have to that you can apply as sort of a test. Let's call it a Howey test sort of scenario, where you have certain pillars, and as long as you meet the criteria, then you're decentralized. And if the SEC steps in and they decide they want to object to your certification, and they say, we think that you're not decentralized because of this, I like the idea they have to provide a detailed analysis. So they're not putting the onus back on the applying party, because the applying party has already filled out their application for certification, and they've said, here's why we're decentralized. And now the SEC says, why object? Okay, well, why do you object? Let me explain in detail, not just kind of some, hyperbole over it, but explain in detail why you think it's not decentralized. And that at least allows for a discussion. But I think, Chip, here's the next step that really changes things. And this is where they are taking away from some of the power of the SEC. But, Chip, I think that this act, in conjunction with Warren Davidson's act of removing the chair position and having an actual SEC commission that votes on this instead of the chair making determination on this. Because right now, Gary Gensler, he's like a Gestapo commandant, right? And He's just making he doesn't care what the board says, what the commissioners say. He's going to say whatever he wants to say, detrimental, not detrimental. He could care less, on the fallout. And that's bad. That's bad form. And that's what Warren Davidson was addressing. But in this case, so here we have regulation of SEC intermediaries. The act would enable registration of digital asset trading platforms as an alternative trading system, or an ATS. It would prohibit the SEC from denying a trading platform from an exemption to operate as an ATS on the basis that the platform trades digital assets. And that's one of the things that Gary Gensler, I think he's pretty adamant that he wants to make it more difficult for trading platforms if they're trading crypto asset. The act also requires the SEC to modify its rules to allow broker dealers to custody digital assets if they meet certain requirements. We don't know what those requirements are yet. Additionally, the act would require the SEC to write rules to modernize certain regulations for digital asset. I don't know. I agree with that part of it. So we're going to make a law, then we're going to let them write the rules.
Yeah, that's first of all, anything allowed, only Congress writes the rules. So I think it's worded kind of pretty wonky, but the whole idea, what's key here is the fact that modernizing what we have right now is 1933, 1934 legislation on top of the Howey test, which is 1946, 47, whatever that happened. And now this is saying that right now, whereas we're not going to pretend that a digital asset is going to be regulated the same as, let's say, a stock or another type of a security, because they're defining the fact that digital assets are not the same, and having these alternative trading system is defining exactly what it is. And then the regulation of the CFTC, where they're talking about, creates a digital commodity exchange framework that's similar to an existing exchange framework in the Commodity Exchange Act for designated contract markets and swap execution facilities. So a registered DCE would be able to comply with the requirements and within the act and certain longstanding CEA core principles, as well as CFTC regulations. Includes the monitoring of trading activity, prohibition of abusive trading practices, kind of the normal stuff that goes along with that. The minimal capital requirements, just so to make sure that it's on the up and up. But what I don't like about this is still, because it's not a security, there's no reason to have this SEC anywhere involved in this, which is the problem I have with this bill. And it's like, you want to voice the opinion? Great. Come on. French Hill, come on the chain. Patrick McHenry, come on the chain. Let's debate this. But let's not talk about the SEC. If we're talking about something that has nothing to do with securities, why would we have the one regulatory body that only regulates securities? It's a bad move. And then that line in there about, well, they're going to write rules. No, they're not going to write anything. And are they going to object to the decentralization? I don't even know what decentralization is, Jeff. So, while in a lot of ways this is a positive move, it does have some wonky components to it, which some might refer to as loopholes for the SEC to get back in and be able to wreak havoc, Jeff.
No, I agree with that loophole. I like the term loopholes, because that's exactly what they're putting into the bill. They're allowing it to be, and this is just a draft kind of outlining what their objective is, what they would like to see. Obviously, they have to come through and they have to put the verbiage together. There's a lot in here, and there's a lot that probably needs to come out of here. And so, and you bring up such a solid point. So you apply, there needs to be a joint board of the SEC and CFTC to sit down and review the application. Because if you don't have a joint commission between the SEC and the CFTC, what I don't like here is that it says here, the act would also permit certain entities to duly register with the CFTC and SEC to be permitted to facilitate transactions in multiple types of assets. Now, I get this idea. This makes sense that if you have different assets, maybe you have one that's a security, maybe one that's a commodity, you want to go down that path. But how do you know right from the get-go, right? If we're applying for it, here's our project. We're going to submit for the certification. We think it's decentralized. We think it's not a non-security. Why would the SEC be the first point of contact with the project and not the CFTC? It doesn't make sense that it has to go through the SEC first. There has to be, the only way this whole bill makes sense is that there is a joint advisory committee, and that's it right here. So, and this is where things start making more sense. And we have to make sure that this actually is a joint committee, that it's an advisory committee that's advising companies that are applying. So let's see what this says. The act also establishes a joint CFTC SEC advisory committee on digital assets, which will consist of 20 market participants who will provide advice to the CFTC and SEC related to digital assets. The act requires the CFTC and the SEC to conduct a joint study on decentralized finance. The act also requires the Department of Commerce and consult with the White House of Science and Tech, the SEC and the CFTC to conduct a study. So here we go, more studies. They have to study. I'm missing something here. And what I'm missing is, if you're going through this whole regulatory process, there needs to be a joint, not a committee that's going to research and understand. I mean, this is important. I think the act, this needs to be a separate act. This has to come before the act. You need to have a specific act that is directing the SEC, the CFTC, to establish an advisory committee that will then be a not just a sounding board, Chip, but they have to be a consult group that will then consult the SEC and the CFTC as they make decisions. But when you apply and you send your certification in, it has to go to a joint commission. And maybe there needs to be a whole new commission. Maybe the SEC and the CFTC are just outdated tech that don't have and shouldn't have jurisdiction over crypto assets. Maybe it's too far out of line from what they understand. Similar to Space Force. There's a new division of the military called Space Force. Is the Navy or the Air Force, the Army, Marines, like who should be the body that regulates space? Or should there be a new military branch called Space Force, which is what happened? They created Space Force because space falls outside of the jurisdiction of all the other branches of military overall. And so you needed a new branch to kind of protect space. Now, Chip, do you think that would be the same thing here? Do the SEC and the CFTC should they be split jurisdiction, or should there be a whole new entity overseeing this whole digital asset space? What are your thoughts on that?
I thought that would be I'm kind of split on that, right? So part of me says, yeah, I'd like another regulatory body to do this. But what I'd like to do is, like, I'm a fan of the Constitution and limited government, and government is a failure, right? And if you want to look at, I want to pull Jim Dees thing up here. He's irritated that the U.S. Congress sold out. It wasn't the U.S. Congress that sold out. Let's be really clear about this. It was my dog's going crazy. Kind of, you don't hear him because of my crisp microphone. He's like the lights over here and stuff. And so the fact is that it wasn't the U.S. Congress that sold out. It was the red team that sold out. It was the speaker, who is a complete and absolute rhino, Republican in name only. Didn't like his choice. Didn't like anything about this guy. And he's a complete sellout. He's always been a sellout. And he paraded around the American people saying that we got everything. Meanwhile, sold everything out. And I had tweeted a clip out of him talking in September of 2022 about, give us the control. And when we get in there, we're going to get rid of these 87,000 new IRS agents to do what? To go after people with money, to go after the middle class and just basically suck every last penny out to see if they made possibly a mistake and they should have contributed an extra couple $100 here or there. And then what happened? They allowed 87,000 these IRS agents, which is in this bill. They basically kicked it down the road, and basically until the end of this term for another couple of years, and then there's another $4 trillion. So what did they do? They expanded it, and they say they're cutting. Let's be real about this, okay? Let's just call it the way it is. I'm so disappointed at the people who in Congress from the red team that did vote for this, because they completely sold out. They sold out for leadership, and I don't want to get into the names, but it's shocking to me, the ones that were out there parading, running their mouth, talking about how they're going to be for the American people and they're going to do this and that, and then they became the uniparty and just sold out. And when you have Chuck Schumer out there talking about how great this is, you know that you've completely lost and sold out. And the fact of the matter is, let's suppose you make $100,000 a year, and you're going to do cuts, right? So you're going to cut $20 here and $20 there. Are those cuts? Are those cuts that mean anything? They're not. But what cuts did they do? They cut the military. They cut this. I mean, all the things that you would think that you don't want the cuts to happen to. It's a complete disaster. And Jim D, I totally understand. It's more compounding debt. It is a clown show. It is a circus. But when we think about Congress trying to do something good, this is a proposal. I like the fact that they're putting a proposal out. They want feedback on it. We're giving feedback on it. I think we all have to jump in there. But when we see what happens, and they're going to have committees, they're going to have meetings to talk about meetings, stop right there, okay? Get some feedback on this. Put the legislation together. This legislation, we go back to Warren Davidson's token taxonomy, Jeff, from 2018, right? 2017, 2018. We don't need anything. We're talking about 5 years ago. Roll it out, pass it, get it on the floor,
it's amazing.
Get it out of committee.
Yep, I agree with that. They typically you go into Congress, one of the reasons they have to put acts and bills together and they want to make it seem like they're doing something, they have to go through re-election every 2 years. So they have to make themselves relevant every 2 years, because now they have to go back to the populace and say, hey, you have to vote for me again. Look at the legislation I've been working on for the past 10 years. I've been trying to get this passed for 10 years. You have to keep voting for me, keep sending me back there. Let me get my slush fund and make sure that I exit as a multimillionaire. So just keep sending me back. But here's something key, and you brought it up early on, which I think is important. And this is the regulatory transition. All right. So this is part of the act. And I think this kind of puts a little cherry on top of everything. But here's the act for a transition period for entities to come into temporary compliance. So now you have all these entities out there, and they have the new act, the new law is like, okay, now let's bring you into compliance. So you have the SEC. So what happens while the commissions are writing final rules to bring comprehensive oversight to these markets? Existing digital assets are eligible for safe harbor. That's what we're trying to figure out. That's the name of safe harbor, under which they are permitted to trade during this period until the SEC or CFTC issues a notice to the trading venue that they are not digital commodities. So at that point, if they're not digital commodities, they won't fall under the CFTC. They'll be deemed a security, and they'll have to fall within the guidelines of being a security at that point. So, and this is where, Chip, I look at this and I see some points, they make sense. We want to bring this into regulatory clarity. We want to make sure that the SEC doesn't have complete overreach like they do right now, because Gary Gensler with the SEC said everything is a security, 99% of everything. And this rule, this law that they're trying to establish is basically saying, hey, wait a minute, take a step back. Let's analyze. Let's go through a registration process. Let's sit down. Let the company fill out the proper certification, or go for proper certification, and explain why they're decentralized. Let's have key points as to how something is decentralized, how it's a digital asset, how it's a commodity, how it's not a security. Let's explain that in detail, and then we can have some clarity. Gary Gensler is off his rocker. He's a nut job.
Completely. And, the thing about when John Deaton always brings this point up, he says, the oranges and the Howey were not the security. They had nothing to do with it. It was the scheme. It was the packaging of, right? It was the way, anticipation of profit based on the efforts of others and an investment contract, right? The four basic sort of tabs, if you will, of the Howey test. And the thing about that is like, when you think about like whether it's a security or not, like decentralization will tell you, is it decentralized, fully decentralized, yes or no, and the scheme. But, it's almost always not the digital asset itself that is the security. It's the scheme in which it's put together, and the definition that they're trying to define of like, well, is it, if it's a security, and it's mostly like the scheme, it's how they're packaging it, which would designate it as security. And if it's not decentralized, obviously it would be, along the lines of security. But I almost think we have such outdated ways of thinking about this. And we go back to the whole idea of the 33 and 34 Securities and Exchange Act. It's just, it's just it's aged, and the whole idea of like government trying to protect you, they're not trying to protect. What they try to do is protect their own interests. That's what they want to protect, you know. And what we saw with the debt ceiling with Kevin McCarthy, who's a complete and utter fool. And they did put a provision in there to take 2 people from the House of Representatives to initiate to get him out of there. I think they should initiate that right now. They should get him out of there, toss him aside, and then get somebody else to run against him and get him out of Congress. There's just too many rhinos in there. And this is people always call me like, oh, Chip, you're a Republican. I'm not. Listen, I hate most of them, okay, if you want to be honest. I don't like them. I like their closest thing that I would call to a constitutional conservative. I'm an independent. I've been independent for over 20, close maybe 25 years because I dislike most of them. Now, the Democrats, I will say this about them. They're transparent. They'll tell you exactly where they're at. They're not going to BS you. They're going to tell you exactly where they're at. And I admire that about them because you're never going to get that with the Republicans. The red team is always going to sit there, run to a microphone, start, you know, especially when they're not in power. This is the best thing. Like, we would do this and we would do that. And then when they have power, flush it right down the toilet, sell everybody out. That's what they're good at. I had to go on a rant there, Jeff. I'm mad.
No, that was a good rant. And, you know, so here's the thing, unfortunately, with the red team, you know, versus the blue team. The blue team can sometimes, dance circles around the red team for the purpose. If you think about Charlie Brown, if you guys know the Charlie Brown comics, Lucy, the one character in Charlie Brown, would always hold the football and get Charlie Brown to come and kick the football. Now imagine the blue team are Lucy and the red team are Charlie Brown, right? And so the blue team always sets it up, and they're dictating the outcome of the terminology and the direction things are going in. They say, here you go, here's the football, come and kick it. And the red team says, hey, we're all in. We're going to come kick the football. And guess what happens? Every single time the football gets yanked, and there goes Charlie Brown flying and falling on his ass. And and this happens time and time again, and it's unfortunate, but that seems to be the reality. So another comment here, Jared. Remember years ago when everyone was wondering if Gary was going to be good or not? You know, 2 people who said he was not going to be good are right here, Chip and I. So if you go back in time, I can't tell you which video it was. I'm sure it's many videos. But when everyone was discussing, look how amazing Gary Gensler is. He taught at MIT. It's going to be great for the space. He's going to be great for the SEC. It's going to be amazing for crypto. There were 2 of us sitting here, and we were very specific that Gary Gensler was not going to be good for the digital asset space. So,
you know how we knew that, Jeff?
How did we know that?
Because it's part of the blue team, and we've been around it long enough to know what their underlying instincts are, what they want to do, and how they operate. That's purely on that alone, right? I mean, everything else told you one way, but just knowing the way it operates and the party operates, you kind of knew.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I want to get to this. Right here. So Kelly says, "Hey, why the clickbait title?" Okay. Well, first of all, if you've been around long enough, you know that we put a lot of this stuff up there, and it's kind of we're kind of making fun of the space because we will see all kinds of crazy stuff being put up there and all kinds of views. And I'm telling you, there's another person in the space will get 400 or 500 people on a live stream and talk complete and utter nonsense. Bullshit's a better word for it. Complete BS, nonstop, and everyone can't wait to hear. And there's people that are like sending money, and here's 20, and here's 100, and here's 50, and I'm thinking to myself, this is nonsense. We have a little fun with it. We goof on it because I think it's healthy. And most of the time, we'll dispel like whatever that title is very early on. Are we selling? And part of that is, and Jeff even laughed and even alluded to it in the tease where he's like, I'm selling all my XRP. As it's getting ready to move, I'm selling it all, right? We're having a little fun with it because of the fact that we're kind of goofing on the whole idea of clickbait. So, and honestly, we put up we have our own stats. We put up exactly what it is, viewership down. So does the clickbait work? Absolutely, 100% every single time without fail. So part of it's us having a little bit of fun with it.
Yep.
Jeff,
you got to have
get
fun with it.
Videos.
That's why Popo was saying only stupid will sell XRP now. I mean,
believe me, they're stupid out there. I've seen all kinds of stuff. People are super happy at 52 cents. I bought at 22 cents. Oh man, I 2x'd my investment. Hey, everybody, this is the cool thing. You do whatever you want. But I've seen a lot of that out there too. So we're kind of just making fun of that. I want to put 2 back-to-back videos about Warren Davidson. One of them, he was on interview with CoinDesk. The other one was with Tim Pool. This was last week. I meant to do this, but I saw somebody clip the one segment. But let's listen to Warren Davidson talk with CoinDesk first here, and then we'll get into the Tim Pool and talking about Gary Gensler.
Set up the protocols and architecture for every major innovation since the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution, automobiles, aviation, aerospace, computing, the internet era. Why would we bail now on fintech? I mean, the reality is we have about 4.5% of the world's population. We have about 25% of the world's GDP. We have over 50% of the world's invested capital in our capital markets. But when you look at crypto, 70 to 90% of the liquidity is offshore. That is not good for our capital formation in the United States. We need the system that we have in our country to provide the things that only our markets can. And we should work to do that with legislation, not just putting pressure on regulators. But one of the regulations that Gary Gensler has highlighted is we need to restructure the SEC. We need to eliminate the chairmanship and create a 3-3 parity with the commission so that the commission actually has to be collaborative instead of being driven by an activist.
Nice. Dude, that is probably one of the best statements. And what he's talking about also is holding the unelected bureaucrat to account. So if you think about a large portion of this government in the U.S., for everyone outside of the U.S., kind of get a little glimpse of what happens here. But you have the elected officials, Congress every 2 years, Senate every 6 years, president every 4 years, and then there's a lot of other positions, local positions, state rep, state senate, state house, all of that within each individual state. But the one consistent that seems to maintain on the federal level in Washington are the unelected bureaucrats, and the bureaucracy is thick. And so one of the issues that you have when you go to the unelected bureaucracy is that these individuals see elected officials come and go. Some are lifers somehow, and they're there to enrich themselves. But installed. Installed there. But the unelected bureaucrat, they believe they're the ones who run government. They don't write the laws, but they're the ones running everything. And so when you see elected officials come and go, they believe the elected official, and I'm thinking about this from a mentality perspective, is there to work for the unelected bureaucrat. And so here's Gary Gensler, who is appointed to that position as an unelected bureaucrat, and he believes that he can dictate the outcome. He can dictate the direction. It's super problematic. So by removing that chair position from the SEC, it does help put the SEC in the position that it was probably meant to be back in 1933 and 1934 when they invented this notion of an SEC. And so we need to have some sort of a regulatory body to help manage and monitor the development of business, because big business was transitioning and was getting ready to explode on the scene, right? 1933, 34, we saw a massive, increase. And so now when we look at it, the SEC, the EPA, you can go through division by division by division of government. The SEC becomes the model of how everything else should be. What do you think, Chip? I think, to me, this is monumental if they can get this done.
Yeah, I think so too. But again, when I think about, one thing, Orange Man Bad brought this up, and I've always thought since Ross Perot ran back in the 90s, I've always had the thought that if any country was run by an actual business person instead of somebody who came, most of the people in Congress are attorneys. Was their first job, right? So they come from this certain sort of a thought pattern, whether prosecuting, defending, whatever. That's what they come from. And I think about, like, these people in Congress are always they're just disconnected. So you have a business person come in and then run it, and that's what kind of like what Ross Perot was trying to do back in the 90s. And I thought, like, okay, you didn't have to like the guy, but I love the fact that he built an empire and built a phenomenal company. So someone like a Trump that came in, for the first time ever, we actually had trade deals that made sense. And they don't, not that they made sense for us, but it also made sense for Canada and Mexico, because that one was absolutely ridiculous. So it required so much to be business-wise to be split between these three countries versus being all one-sided and against these countries, or one or having some power of the other. So one of the things he brought up was like, we have a bunch of deadbeat nut jobs inside of government who can't negotiate, and people, they send a delegation to go to negotiate somewhere and they just get stepped on. And again, business people, when you're negotiating, they don't know. And if you want to read the great book on negotiation, pick up The Art of the Deal. I don't care if you like Trump. I don't care if you don't like him. But I'll tell you what, the guy knows how to negotiate. I read the book. It changed the path of my career. I became a business guy, and I leverage a lot of what's in that book. I can give you 5. You can have here. Let's talk about these 5 points. I'm going to let you have 2 of them, but I'm going to keep the 3 that I care about, right? So that's like kind of like one of the negotiation tactics, and learning how to negotiate and being a negotiator. And if you want to know who's not a negotiator, Kevin McCarthy. If you want to know who is a complete moronic fool, his name is Kevin McCarthy, and he is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and he needs to be ousted ASAP because a complete and absolute sellout. And so are all of the people who voted yes on this bill, who basically gave the Democrats carte blanche. They control the spending. They just gave up their power. There is zero negotiation tactics. There was nothing that was negotiated. There were no cuts in that bill that were made any kind of significance. And so just to kind of wrap up the rant, when I think about, Jeff, anything with the government, we're going to allow government to create another regulatory body or define what the SEC is going to do or the CFTC is going to do. Let's talk about less government. Let's talk about doing more with less. Let's get rid of the government. Reagan had a great idea. Let's cut the government. It's too big. Well, you know what happened? Reagan came in. Had to clear my throat there. Reagan comes in, started cutting the government, 25%, 30%. And you know what? When he left office, it was bigger than when he came in. So there's a lot of great intentions. People have a lot of great intentions, but when the rubber hits the road on the execution side, you need to execute. And we are getting close to having a DAO. I want to see who the first country, maybe it's El Salvador, I don't know, but the first country that's going to be run as a decentralized autonomous organization, where it'd be more of like a DAG, decentralized autonomous government, where, Jeff, you brought this up before, the one vote on the blockchain, one vote, one person, and you know exactly where somebody stands. There's no jury rigging the system. There's no installing people versus having them voted in. Do we really believe on the Republican side someone like a Lindsey Graham is so popular that he keeps getting voted in, or a Nancy Pelosi is so popular that the city of San Francisco is dying? Businesses are leaving. They just closed 5 new businesses, Old Navy, Walgreens. Everyone's moving out of the city. There are needles everywhere, fecal matter everywhere, and we're supposed to believe that this representative is doing great by the people. And we're supposed to realize that people voted for a guy who can't even stand on his feet for more than 5 minutes without tripping over his shoelaces or a sandbag on stage. You know, you saw this happen to Biden when he was on stage. He tumbles over. It's embarrassing, man. It's also elder abuse. You got somebody who doesn't have all the faculties, who is not mentally capable. It's time to issue the test. Let's get the test going, and is not competent for the job. And then what we have? Laughing hyena right behind that. I mean, this is where we're at, Jeff. This is where, and do we really believe? Do we really believe that people chose this? I mean, seriously, we actually going to sit here and pretend that, oh yeah, good job, well done, because people love inflation. People love, 7% interest rates. People love, you can't even borrow money anymore if you're a small business. It's become so damn expensive. There's no more liquidity in the market. But don't worry, we're all going to pretend that people voted for this. This is what they knew was coming, and people voted for it, Jeff. I'm sorry, I'm not in that camp at all.
And 7% borrowing is being nice. Right now, it's 7.5%. If you're trying to get capital equipment, it's about 7.5%. So large equipment. And so if you're trying to fund and renovate your business and buy, interest rates are heavy. They're very, very heavy. Obviously, if you're making money, then you offset your interest rate. You're going to write that off. But it's crazy. It's a crazy time right now. 100% right. And it's interesting because, Chip, you bring up the whole thing over the debt ceiling. I mean, the whole thing from start to finish was just all media hype. We knew they were going to settle on it. We knew that they would sign off on it. We knew that it was they're just plain, people.
Did I lose you, Jeff? It's weird. Did I lose Jeff or did I? Guys, can you still hear me? I don't know if you can still hear me. Maybe I'm not here anymore. Anyway, I don't know if just me. For some reason, I don't hear Jeff anymore, and I'm not sure if it's me or Jeff that can be heard. But please throw something in the chat because I'm not sure that I'm still here anymore. Either I'm not here, Jeff. I lost one or the other. But anyway, I'm going to keep talking about this. I wanted to throw this next clip up here. Okay, you can hear me good. Yeah, it sounds like Jeff. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, Jeff popped off on the thing. It was really weird. Sometimes you don't know, is it me or is it Jeff? It looks like Jeff froze here. So I don't know if he's aware of it. There he goes. Okay, well, there you go. Let me just do this before he comes back. But I know Jeff was going to go on something right there. And I'm sitting there like, is it me? Is it Jeff? You just never really know. But before Jeff comes back in here, I think, just kind of staying in tone with this is that, I'll call everything out the way I see fit. And when I see somebody like I just saw Sophie's comment up there about Matt Gaetz, this one right here, Matt Gaetz, who's one of the people that put in the provision when they elected McCarthy as speaker, that it would take 2 people from the House of Representatives to get him out of there. And monitoring, there's nothing to monitor. Sold out the American people down, and this is ridiculous. And this whole thing of the debt ceiling, and people are like, we shouldn't have a debt ceiling. Come on, man. This is untenable anymore. We're at $35 trillion in debt. This doesn't get any better. Before you know, it'll be 45, 50 trillion. This is how the Roman Empire collapsed. You're going to have an absolute collapse at some point. Digital assets could play such a huge role in turning everything around. And the fact is that when people are saying, well, the US dollar, that is a joke. There is no such thing as a US dollar. It is not a sovereign currency. I'm against the Federal Reserve. I think we need to get rid of the Federal Reserve. I think if someone, that next Republican that comes in will destroy the Federal Reserve. The best way to do that is what we have right now, right? This reckless spending, this massive debt. The idea of a central bank is a broken idea. All central banks lose in the end. The fact that this one's been around so long is mind-boggling. The fact that it's been 50 plus years since we came off the gold standard. It's backed by nothing. It's play money, and all it does is it devalues the currency over a period of time. And people are like, "Oh, everything's going up in price." No, your dollar buys more. Your currency buys less. And as somebody that participates in the digital asset community, I think what's really important here is the entire idea that we have to crush central banks. Central banks. If you had a true sovereign currency, if it looked like a real digital asset, not a CBDC, whereas you could issue control, but if you had a true sovereign currency that was of the people and by the people, you wouldn't have the system built on debt. And the system that is built consistently on debt is what enslaves everybody and causes a big problem. Jeff, you were like midstream there. We totally lost you. I don't know what happened, but
the internet went out.
And I was wondering, like, did I go out? And it turned out, no, I didn't go out. It was you that went out. It was like kind of a weird thing, but I was just going in about just another rant about central banks, Jeff. But I wanted, before we get out of here, because I only have a little bit of time here, I wanted to throw up Warren Davidson was on Tim Pool. Big podcaster, if you don't know, he has a lot of great guests, great perspective. Love the podcast, but this is Warren Davidson talking about Gary Gensler.
Going to get rid of Gary Gensler. I gave a hearing where I was able to communicate with him and say, look, I plan to fire you. We've got a bill that basically restructures the Securities and Exchange Commission and eliminates the chairmanship, i.e. fires Gary Gensler as chairman. He would still be a commissioner. And right now there are 5 commissioners. Originally, it was created as a commission because the commission was supposed to do the decision making. and then they supercharge the powers of the chairman. And Gary Gensler is front running everybody. I mean, he's moving ahead of Congress. He's Republicans and Democrats, the House, the Senate. He's moving ahead of Treasury. He's moving ahead of CFTC. And frankly, it's all to impose his will on everything. And so there's almost no accountability. The commission, you either have 4 commissioners that are useless, or you need, and one chairman, or you go back to say, look, our capital markets are the best in the world. I mean, look, we got 4 or 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's GDP, but we have over 50% of the world's invested capital. I mean, why would you mess that up? But Gary Gensler's in the process of messing it up. And you look at crypto, he's clearly declared war on crypto. He's a henchman for Elizabeth Warren, and he's front running everything for Elizabeth Warren, frankly, Sherrod Brown, who's the chairman of Senate Banking. So they're doing nothing over there except incentivizing him to do this. The way to rein him in is to restructure the Securities and Exchange Commission. So he's a henchman for Elizabeth Warren, and he's front running everything.
You hear that? Oh, yeah, that was like great. It's like he's a henchman for Elizabeth Warren. You hear,
he's a henchman for Elizabeth Warren, and he's front.
It's like sort of like the gas, but Warren Davidson's on fire here. He's absolutely 100% right. Jeff, what are your thoughts on the way he's laying this out once again about this whole idea of restructuring the SEC?
No, he's spot on, and he's talked. I mean, to his point, and we've all discussed this. We all know it. That Gary Gensler is serving to the interest of Elizabeth Warren. I don't understand how Elizabeth Warren has elevated herself to the level of power that she has in general. But she has it. The blue team has structured it in such a way, and if you're listening to any of the judge nomination interviews through Congress, and Kennedy actually had some real good one-liners when they were interviewing these judges. And some of these judges, they have no idea. They don't know the Constitution. They don't know the articles that pertain to judges or anything. I mean, they're completely clueless. And Kennedy brought up one point. They said as long as they lean left and they support the leftist ideology, they're in. They rubber stamp the judges in. That's how Elizabeth Warren's staying in power. I mean, it's amazing to me, and the fact that she's buddies with the chair of the SEC and she has power over the SEC. We're in a very warped space right now. The pendulum is swinging. The pendulum has to swing back center. The U.S. overall politically always hovers right of center. It never goes left of center to where now we're far left of center. It has to come back center. The one time where we had a balance, and whether you like them, hate them, doesn't matter, with Bill Clinton, when we had Clinton sitting in the presidency and we had Newt Gingrich sitting as the head of the House, as Speaker of the House. That balance is what achieved outcome between the two of them. We had a balance, and the pendulum was sitting right of center, slightly right of center, because that's where the constitutional republic has to sit. It never sits on the left side. And so we have to get back to that point. We have to get point to center, and it's going to happen. It's coming back generationally. The kids that are growing up now, and they have less than what their parents had. They have a more difficult time than what their parents had. The one responsibility that we have as grown adults is to leave the country in a better condition than when we got it. And right now we're failing at that. We're leaving it worse off. So our generation that's coming up right now, the kids that are out of college, that generation, they're part of the problem, unfortunately. But the generation that's coming up now that didn't get all the free handouts, it's going to be a complete devastation for the leftist ideology. They don't, for all the reasons, we're not going to get into all the reasons, but it's moving in that direction. It has to move in that direction. And this is a good point that he brings up too.
Tom Richard says, Jeff, respectively disagree. It's not a pendulum. It's a slow move left over time. JFK would be an ultra conservative today. I kind of agree with that statement, but and the weird thing is RFK Jr., while he is pro crypto and some other things, but if you read his platform, he's 100% left team. I mean, and he's even crazier on some of these other things. So everyone's like, oh, RFK, this is great. You want to know why the real reason I like Robert Kennedy Jr., why I like him? I'll tell you why, because he's going to split the vote. Here's what's going to happen. They're trying to run him out of Dodge. They don't like him. They're going to get their candidate in there. Don't be surprised if Dianne Feinstein gets ousted over in California because she's kind of on the thing. They'll install somebody, which means the governor can somebody, and they'll put somebody in there. It'd be interesting who that might be. It might be the wife of an ex-president, and you might see that person then all of a sudden decide to run for the presidency because they don't have a strong team on the left side. And what do you see from that? What come out of that whole thing? Well, I have a feeling that I've said this before, Biden will not serve out the term. He won't make it to it. If the 25th Amendment says anything, that'll be the first one out there. He's become an extreme liability. There's too many investigations going on right now. And when you're talking about having their candidate, which will be the Democratic candidate, RFK Jr. is going to run as an independent. And he's basically going to pull a Ross Perot. He will split the vote. He'll get 10 to 15% of the Democrat vote, which will guarantee a win by a Republican. That's what he's going to do. And that's why I like him in the race, because he's not going to be the Democrat nominee, but he will still run and he will filter people off. And I believe that vote will mostly come from the left, although some of it may come from the right. Something else that I wanted to kind of, before we get out of here, Jeff, we both got a time deadline we need to get out of here for.
Dream on, Chip. Dream. Man, I've missed Alchemist. I'm so glad to have Alchemist back. It's amazing.
Dream on, dream on. A little Aerosmith there. So thank you to Free American Spirit for putting this on there. Oops, we made a boo-boo. So I wanted to put this up here, but the SEC is going to dismiss 42 enforcement cases after internal data mishap. And this is on Reuters. So if you think about Reuters being the most left-leaning sort of publication out there, this is the kind of headline that you would put. You'd put after a mishap. It wasn't a mishap. It was dirty deeds done dirt cheap, okay? Look at this right here. After an internal mishap, it's almost like somebody was walking with a cake and oops, they fell on the cake. It spilled and now the cake has been tainted. But let's find out what happened. This is Reuters. Reuters is an utter joke, but again, this is what I pulled up. So the decision comes after the SEC concluded a lengthy review of a matter first raised in April of 2022 when it disclosed that some of its databases had, here's some more colorful language, inadvertently allowed SEC enforcement staff to view legal materials meant for officials with its in-house court. Okay, so basically what they did was they basically violated the rules, and there had to be a whistleblower because this does not come to light so they were viewing materials not meant to be viewed by and so it's kind of funny. It's like, well, geez, isn't this interesting? Because I'm wondering if it turns out this wasn't part of Ripple, but I think we kind of know where this is going. The enforcement and in-house ruling arms of the SEC are supposed to be kept completely separate from each other regarding such matters. In a statement, the SEC regretted the lapse and is committed to fixing it. Jeff, how confident are you in their commitment to fix that?
On a scale of 0?
On a scale of yes or no? How about
on
a scale of yes or no?
A scale of 0?
A scale of yes or no?
How about a scale of no? A scale of no. That's it. That's your only option. Do I feel confident that the fact that they even allowed that to happen to begin with, we know that they allowed it. It's a absolute sham, Chip. All right, let's wrap. This was amazing. You guys are the best and the brightest in the crypto YouTube space right here on the chain. Come back tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with us. Chip and I will go on another rant, another roll. You guys are awesome. Maybe. We'll see you guys on
the next one. Chip and Jeff out.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.